The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back and welcome to this week's Marketing with Purpose Kit, this special series of the Bliss Business Podcast, where we really explore what it takes to make marketing leaders have a real impact, create that impact that goes really beyond just the numbers. I'm Mike Liwski, and in this week's episode, we're going to sit down with Dan Wheeler, and we're going to explore really, his leadership approach, the different strategies that drive performance, but that also create resonance with their audience. And together we'll dive into what's working, what's not, and really the two topics that we love to talk about on this show: how purpose and empathy truly transform the way that a brand connects with people. So let's get started. In today's show, as I mentioned, I'm being joined by Dan Wheeler. He's the CMO at K9 Resorts. Now, with a strong background in marketing, guest experience, and innovation, he's scaled brands like Dunkin', Baskin-Robbins, Wahlburgers, and Uncle Julio's, as well as held leadership roles at Workplace Media and Rap Worldwide. Dan's also a club CMO member on InnoLeads, their advisory board, and he enjoys cooking, fitness, the outdoor adventures with his wife, 4 children, and their 2 rescue dogs, Roscoe and Pepper. So we're going to explore today on this show really about customer connection in this data-driven world that we're living in. So I'm so excited really to dive in. Dan, welcome to our show today.
Well, thanks for the kind introduction. It's almost like my mom wrote it. I've been looking forward to meeting with you. So this is I'm really appreciative of being on the pod today.
Absolutely. And we know you've got some amazing franchise experience and insights to share with our audience. So Dan, really before we sort of dive into our whole topic today, I wanted to sort of hear, why was the topic of customer connection in this data-driven world the topic that you chose to explore with us today? Like what makes it so important right now?
Well, I first of all, marketing with purpose in general is something that really weaves throughout my DNA. So I've been really looking forward to talking about that broader topic as well. But the specific topic around human connections in a data-driven world that's something that marketers are constantly dealing with. In today's day and age, data's never been more available, and it's also pretty overwhelming too at the same time. If you think about it, you can measure just about everything, so that doesn't always help us understand our customers better just because there's data available. What matters most is, as many people say, using that data to create more human experiences, not to replace human experiences. So, here, at K9 Resorts, we're constantly talking about the emotional side of trust. If you think about it, what we're all about is dog parents literally handing over a member of their family to us, right? So that human connection, that emotional connection is really, really important. If we don't connect on that level, all the dashboards in the world aren't gonna help us. Data might give us the kind of the clarity, but it's really, to use your word, the empathy is where we get the most meaningful connection with our customers, especially given how important of a role we play in the lives of them and their beloved pets.
Absolutely, right. That's absolute music to my ears, and I love hitting on that point because with so much data and all this activity, that connection could really get lost, right? We would pretend to lose our focus. So that's such a strong point. Right. Now we know, right, as well as CMOs, that oftentimes we're pulled between these like short-term campaign results or having to hit quarterly results.
Yep. And my CMO's right next door.
Right. I know, they're like just whispering to us in our ears. And then we've got the long-term brand building that we want to do, right? Because we're trying to build a long-term organization. So how do you, for example, ensure that marketing stays aligned, with the company's growth goals? But at the same time, where do you find, perhaps like the biggest points of friction in trying to make that happen, due to, quarterly goals or short-term goals?
Well, I mean, I think it's a really good question, and it's definitely something we deal with on a regular basis as marketers. And I've had it throughout my career, and it's definitely true here too. But I really, really value my relationship with our CFO here at K9 and throughout my career with the CFOs that I've worked with, because when you are aligned, with the financial planning and accounting folks, you're going to be able to go to great places. But there's still that kind of tug of war, right? That always happens around short-term results, long-term brand building. And I think one of the best ways to get through it anyway is you just be crystal clear about what growth actually means for your brand,
Right.
And if you have alignment across the enterprise, or at least across leadership, on what growth means for your brand, then you can really do great things together. So for us, growth isn't just about opening more locations. That's definitely part of it, but it's not just about that. It's also about deepening, loyalty and word of mouth among customers we already have. So I like to say we do both sprints and marathons. Okay.
Yeah.
Sprints are where our performance marketing drives leads and bookings today for our franchisees. And the marathon is, where our brand storytelling comes in to make sure that we're building trust and relationships for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I think the friction usually comes in when either, our teams or maybe even our franchisees, they're under pressure for immediate results, right? And that's why I've always found that when you can really reinforce how much brand strength can actually fuel performance, not in spite of that, the conversation kind of shifts from either or. Should we do, short term, or should we do long term? Should we do long term brand building, or should we do short term performance marketing? Instead of it becoming either or, it's more about let's do both.
Right.
I would say, and it really, I mean, and that really is, the secret to success, right? You've got to be able to lean into both sides of that, the short term, results driven, and the long term brand building. I was just talking to somebody the other day about this. So a great example of this is, guests don't typically book directly, at least from us, from a social ad, right?
Right.
They may be perusing their feed or what have you. They may be engaged in dog-related content, but they don't necessarily book a boarding night or a daycare from us directly from a social ad. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't show up in the person's social feed just because they don't book directly from there, because you have to be where the customer is and be there and, engaged with them throughout their whole journey.
So true.
All of our time focusing on the bottom end of the funnel, then we just dump all of our money into search, paid search ads. And, we would have nowhere near the level of relationships and connection that we have with our customers today.
Yeah. Wow. There is a lot to unpack there for sure. I love, that point that you talk about with, not necessarily being on social, because what we're seeing from consumers today is, they are streaming. They're also socializing on social. Then it seems like they go to search, right, to really find, and then they go to shop or direct. And so you're absolutely right? Having a presence across all those. So many good points there, too. Because also, what's the use of, your earlier point of opening locations when they maybe just close down in a year, right? That having that as a metric, I would say, is, probably like a good indicator, right? Like lifetime value of the location. So
and also thinking about the whole decision-making funnel. Or, I mean, the reality is, I think that the customer funnel is an outdated concept, to be honest with you, Mike. I think it's kind of, it's more like someone told me the other day, it's more like a customer tornado, right? Because you kind of, a prospect or even a customer is like hearing about you and knowing about what their needs are, and throughout their entire daily lives, getting bombarded with messages. And it really is a tornado. And you've just got to make sure that you show up throughout that journey and understand that it's not going to be a linear journey, like it is in the textbooks. It's actually going to be, quite an interesting journey, a tornado-like one. And if you think about it that way, then it really helps you understand why you need both long-term brand building to make sure you're telling your story, engaging with the customer, but also have the opportunities for them to to book when the time is to book, and make sure that you're showing up, at that point of need.
That makes a ton of sense. In fact, on my LinkedIn feed, I'll post later, Boston Consulting Group just came out with this great report about just your point there on, it's not a funnel at all, but really it bounces around.
I'll have to read it. I like it.
Yeah. I'll share it with you after the show. So maybe changing over to go-to-market in the franchise world, you've got a lot of teams that you need to communicate with and be consistent with. So I'm really curious, when you're launching, say, a new product, a new service, or an entry right into a new market with a new location, what's been your most effective way to align with sales, with the service side, with customer success teams? And where does that alignment, tend to break down sometimes?
Great way to think about it is we're constantly launching new products and new services because we truly believe that our responsibility as a leader in this space, we're definitely the leader in luxury pet care, is that, the challenge of leadership is that you've constantly got to be continuing to raise the bar on what luxury pet care means, because guest expectations are changing, competitors are going to school on you and learning from you. And so you need to continually be raising the bar. So we are constantly launching new products and opening into new markets. And I think the key to making sure that everybody's aligned as we go to market is to understand the story we're telling and the customer that we're serving. So at K9, when we enter a new market, say we're going to be opening up in Brooklyn soon, are going to be our first real true urban location. And so we have to start by aligning around that urban local pet parent. Who are they? What do they care about? What are the problems that we're solving for them? And is quite different actually from pet parents throughout, in a more suburban environment or what have you. So, these are people that work hard all day. They've got limited space where they live, and they really worry about their pups and the kind of care that they're getting while they're at work or on vacation. So as long as our teams have a common understanding of who that guest is and the need that we're solving for, then we have the clarity that sales and ops and marketing can work in lockstep. So I found that it's the alignment breaks down when teams focus on their own metrics instead of the shared outcome. And our shared outcome is all around the consumer need and who the consumer is, right? So the voice of the consumer is what rules, right? Yeah. So, and if we think about what is success going to look like for that customer, so at K9, that success for that customer is a dog that's pulling their owner into K9 because they can't wait to see their friends, right? And then when they're picked up after work or at the end of their vacation, they're beat tired because they had a blast all day. Right. That is exactly what that pet parent is looking for, right? Because it gives them the trust that they know that their dog was enjoying themselves. They're pulling them into the resort, and they know that when they get home from a busy day at work, they don't have to worry about taking them on a 3-mile walk because all they want to do is sleep on the couch next to their side. And that's what we do for them, And so if we can have the entire team rallying around making that happen, then we do great things.
Yeah, absolutely. Without a customer, we don't have a company. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So that's a beautiful, point. And I think, hopefully that, doesn't get lost. Certainly the most successful companies are very mindful of that. So now maybe switching over to the thought around customer insights, right? And those customer insights, which you sort of almost were kind of talking to just now, driving the strategy. I'm really curious if maybe you can share a specific example, share a time that maybe there was some customer feedback or some behavioral data, qualitatively that maybe you got that completely perhaps shifted the direction of, some of your marketing, and maybe what that taught you about, not being just sort of analytics or financially driven, but, being driven as well by, that customer insight.
Yeah. No, I absolutely have a bunch of examples of that. The one that's, happened relatively early on in my time here at K9. I've always prided myself in being a good listener and observer of people. Right. Yeah. And so, I definitely have a left side and a right side of my brain that are working simultaneously. But I think some of the best marketers are ones that can just listen well and observe what people are saying, what they're not saying, right? And just kind of understand what they're feeling. And I remember that, when I started at K9, I actually spent 2 weeks in the resorts learning the entire operation, from a pet care technician to the customer service rep to general management, et cetera. So I want to make sure I fully understood the service that we were providing, and spent a lot of time, obviously, with pets and their pet parents. And I remember there were first-time customers that were coming in were really, really nervous about leaving their dog, even though they loved the idea of luxury dog boarding for sure, but they were still really, really nervous. And I saw that insight, and it really kind of reshaped for me how I thought about our messaging. So instead of our messaging being around just our features or our amenities, we really started to lean into, that whole concept we were talking about earlier, emotional resonance, right? So instead of talking about, we have the cleanest facilities around, for example, which we do by far, incidentally. Instead of leaning really heavily into what type of cleaners we use and what our HVAC system is, all those kind of details, we talk about how that cleanliness actually just ensures that your best friend is going to be healthy when they stay with us. That's where the emotional connection is. It's not about what kind of cleaners do you use. It's about, is my dog going to be healthy? And when I have confidence and trust they're going to be healthy, I have a really I have a much stronger relationship with you. It's another example is with our training with our staff. We have industry leading staff training at K9 Resorts. Cornell, vet approved, et cetera. But it's not just the credentials of our training. It's knowing that as a result of all that training, our experts are going to go above and beyond to make sure that your dog is loved, right? And that word loved is the most important thing. Just like the healthy part of we're clean, so your dogs are healthy. We have expert staff, so you can make sure your dogs are loved. And so that shift in how we talk about ourselves has definitely driven a lift in our business. And it also taught me that, you can get some insight just by listening or observing customers, not just by, digging into the spreadsheets of data.
What a great way, I think, to be able to present yourself as a brand that is a partner, right, with your customer, not just somebody who's on the other side of the table, but really you're on the same side looking at the health of, their pet that they care for so much,
We essentially say that, our promise, our brand promise is essentially, we are going to be the cleanest facility. And if you want to know the details around that, we can tell you, but that means your dog's going to be healthy. We have an experience like none other, a luxury experience like none other. So you can ensure that your dogs are going to be happy. And we have world-class training, so you can make sure that your dogs are going to be loved by pet care experts. So healthy, happy, and loved. Those are 3 words that everybody wants to hear about their pet, right?
You're absolutely right about that. We're going to have you on our Bliss Business Podcast show, because we love to talk about love really in that segment, and the role that love should play in business. So now maybe turning over to a different topic, right? Marketing should really be viewed as a revenue engine, right? Not as a cost center. And sometimes it gets, put in that spot. So, some organizations still see marketing as a cost center. And I'm curious, for our audience that might be struggling with this point, what have you found to be the most effective way to sort of shift that perception? And what barriers, did you perhaps run into when trying to make that effort of marketing being directly related to revenue?
Well, that's everything, really. The reality is, so we very much know that we own the revenue side of our business engine. So if we aren't feeding the funnel for franchisees and building relationships with customers and prospects, then they're not successful. And if our franchisees aren't successful, then we're not successful. It's just the most obvious piece of our business as franchisors. So it's on me as the marketing head to connect the dots between our activity, our brand activity, and business results. So we, like others, I'm sure, we track leads throughout the entire funnel, from leads that come from our grassroots efforts, which are a little bit harder to measure, but still are measurable, to our digital campaigns, and how many of those have turned to on-site bookings. And we share that visibility with franchisees every day. They have a dashboard, so they know what kind of return they're getting from each one of their efforts. But honestly, I think the most persuasive proof of is when they actually feel the impact, not just when they see it in a dashboard. And that, what I mean by that is when they see like a first-time customer walking in, because that's someone they met at the adoption event that they were sponsoring that we told them to go to. That's when it clicks for franchisees. And I think that's a big part of our, how marketers can kind of change that narrative from marketing as a cost center to marketing is actually an investment in relationship building. And so when they can actually see those relationships walk in the door as human beings and with their pets, then they understand, that it's actually working.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good point, right? Because you could stare at a dashboard all day long and not really come to a very strong conclusion. But yeah, just a single visit like that or an interaction could absolutely turn the perception around pretty quickly. Now, this is actually a really good segue into our next topic, because we talked about data earlier, but then now there's all these systems, right? And being able to sort of track that. So I'm kind of curious from your perspective, what's been one of the biggest challenges in getting, that CRM, the lead management, even the sales tools to all kind of work in harmony to be able to show the impact of a campaign per se?
Oh yeah, it's a great question. I mean, because the reality is we have all kinds of tools, and the challenge is that oftentimes they don't talk to each other as well as people might think they do, and they should. So we've here at K9, we've focused a lot, especially in my first year here, on laying a really solid and integrated digital foundation. And no, we're not fully there yet. But it's definitely helped simplify workflows and clean up the data and have automation. So that way franchisees can, they've got a business to run. So that, they can't be working in different business silos and trying to put this all together themselves. That's on us to make sure that they have the marketing tech stack that can lead them where they need to go. And so we have some work to do there, but without question, the biggest challenge in my mind is having a tech stack that's siloed rather than integrated. And so I think we've come a long way for sure and built some really strong integrated systems. And we're just starting to generate the benefit from that with faster follow-ups and higher conversion rates and, just better customer experiences in general. But as I said before, I think the key is to use technology to make things feel more personal and not more robotic, right? So, I mean, it's not there to replace human connection. It's there to inform and improve your human connection. And that's our goal with our marketing technology here at K9.
Yeah. And enhance it, right? That's such a good, for sure. And sometimes, marketers, I've heard them say, when we talk about this is, we want it to result in simple. And simple is a good answer, but you're absolutely true. What you're trying to do through that technology is garner further trust, right? That things are working. And to your point, I'm so glad that you said that, right? Because it's really about them being able to know what is going on and as you said, be able to further foster the connection with them.
I think the reality is everybody wants it to be simple for sure, and that's absolutely what we're driving for. Simple is hard. Because you got to make sure you've selected the right tools. You got to make sure that they talk to each other correctly. You got to make sure that the workflows are all solid, and so we want it to be simple for sure. I mean, our franchisees, some of them are smart marketers. Some of them come from a totally different background, and they just want a tool that that they can rely on. And so the simpler the better. But the point is, it's not easy to make things simple.
That's
the irony of a paradox.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, precisely. And it's so nice to hear, right, that K9 Resorts has that kind of a system for like a future franchisee, to be able to, leverage, the power of having a simple system like that. So that's definitely a job well done. So, here's a topic that, we love to talk about consistently in our agency work and even here on the podcast. So when you really think about the role that marketing plays in a company's future, how do you feel about the role of purpose and empathy in helping to create those genuine, really resonant connections with your audience?
Well, I mean, we talked about that quite a bit so far, but what I can say is that purpose and empathy are everything. A big part of the reason why I was glad to be invited onto this podcast. And the reality is, I mean, so we're in the dog business, and dogs just have this incredible way of reminding you about what a pure connection looks like, right? There's no agenda, there's no filters, you know what I mean? So thankfully, because that's the core of our business, that's built into K9's DNA. Yeah. I mean, our is like no filters, no agenda. Empathy is what leads to a fantastic, pure emotional connection. So again, like I said earlier, our purpose is to raise the standard of pet care for dogs everywhere. And so empathy is how we bring that to life every day, because many, I mean, I'm a pet parent myself. Many of our folks here are pet parents, so we can totally relate to, the anxiety that dog owners feel when they're deciding if or even where they're going to board their best friend, or if they're going on a trip or they need a daycare. I mean, that's an incredibly anxiety-producing event, and we empathize with that because we're pet parents ourselves. So, ultimately, everything we do leads to not only luxury pet care for dogs, but ultimately creating peace of mind for their pet parents as well. And the fact that we ourselves are pet parents helps us to make sure that we're staying true to that every day.
Yeah, it's so circular, for sure. Love the point about empathy. That's where I know that Tulio, our producer, backstage, is probably championing that whole thought of like design thinking principles, right? It starts with empathy, and you're able to have that empathy as well because of who all of you are within the organization. So, Dan, you really want to thank you today for joining us on this series of the Bliss Business Podcast, Marketing with Purpose Kit. I hope that today's conversation really sparked new ideas for how you can align strategy, execution, and purpose in your own work that you're doing today. And if you found real value in this discussion, of course, we would like you to subscribe, obviously, to future episodes, share it with your community and your colleagues, and then as well join the conversation. And remember, right, that great marketing doesn't just sell, it really serves. And so we look forward to seeing you on our next episode.